Have you heard of 33 Immortals, the isometric roguelite that takes inspiration from games like Hades while adding an incredibly unique multiplayer facet? Have you heard of its raid-style mechanics that allow you to take on the genre in a totally unique manner? And have you heard of its unique story that replays the events of Dante's Inferno, allowing you to fight Satan himself? Well, if you haven't, I'm glad you're here, because today on Game Rant, allow me to tell you about 33 Immortals. By far the most interesting piece of 33 Immortals is its absurdly excellent multiplayer premise. Every time you start a raid, you'll be accompanied by either 32 or 21 other players, all working alongside you to conquer torture gates, defeat mini-bosses, or kill Lucifer himself. 33 players all taking on a roguelite at the same time might sound off-putting, but trust me, it works excellently as the group conquers and divides small tasks and then comes together to take on big ones, often breaking into groups of 6 and heading throughout the map and then coming together at the end for a giant boss fight. More than anything though, 33 Immortals forces strangers to play together, and it does so to incredible effect. If someone starts up one of the multiplayer attacks that take 2 other players to charge it, it will only take seconds before all 3 players are standing in, blasting arrows, wrapped in a shield, or dishing out a poison slow layer. If a player goes down and turns into a ghost, they are almost immediately healed by a nearby immortal, regardless of how many enemies are swarming on screen. It's this cooperation, this sense of community as you surge against the forces at hand that makes 33 Immortals so fun. At all times, the game feels like a prison riot as you rip your way to ascension. Gameplay-wise, 33 Immortals is about exactly what you'd expect, albeit a little simple as is necessary with its multiplayer conceit. At base, there are 4 classes you can choose from, which all basically just boil down to 4 weapons, each with its own multiplayer team-up perk. You have a bow, which has the co-op perk of a volley of arrows. You have a sword, which has the co-op perk of granting your teammates shields. You have a staff, which has the co-op perk of a slowing AoE attack, and you have daggers, which have the co-op perk of a damage buff. All of this working relatively simply allows players to know how their synergy with other players is going to work. Upon ascending through Inferno, you can head to Purgato, a much harder area that will require you to level up and to fully understand the cooperation you have with the other Immortals. There is another layer past Purgato, but we will have to wait until the game's full release to see it. While traveling through the world, you can find these purple statues which can upgrade your health, your attack, and your ultimate abilities, and there are also skull statues which you can use to heal before and after a boss fight. That's all in-game progression though, and there's also a meta progression system that happens between runs, improving your character overall. That's mainly done through perks which can be upgraded and acquired through leveling done by missions. One final component to meta progression are relics, which can be found out in the world and equipped between matches. Some are simple, like the Finger of the Doubtful, which gives you plus 200% damage to stunned enemies, and others are more complex, like the Wax Death Mask, which allows everybody in the lobby to get 10% health each time the boss loses 1 full health bar. These are all way more effective than you might realize, and leveling up allows you to equip more and more of them. It's all fairly simple and standard for the roguelite procedure set up to aid the multiplayer-based gameplay. Finally though, we have the aesthetic of the game, which wraps this all in a nice tight package. The story of 33 Immortals is based off of Dante's Inferno, featuring some of the layers of hell mentioned in that book. Most of the story is stripped back though, with small details being given out by the NPCs in the hub area. During runs though, almost no story will be mentioned as you start an uprising to kill Lucifer himself. The visuals of 33 Immortals are again fairly simple, as is necessary with the massive amount of visual detail that comes with 32 other players fighting alongside you. Some of the menuing though and the character design is pretty cool, boasting a gothic manuscript style that really works to set the game apart. The final thing to mention in the aesthetics department is the music and sound, which I found to be serviceable but not a standout. All of this to say that 33 Immortals is still only in early access, as there is another planned area to come and I'm sure much more progression related additions to be had later down the line, and yet it's still an excellent experience. Ultimately, 33 Immortals has one of the most unique multiplayer concepts ever designed, and almost every element of the game simplifies itself in order to boast this mechanic. That isn't bad though, as taking on both Inferno and Purgato is a blast when you work with 32 others. In a genre that has become increasingly repetitive and stale, 33 Immortals works to set itself apart.